You are live.
Good afternoon. This is a meeting with the Education Committee, and present is Commissioner Karras and myself in New York. Commissioner Caravallo is at home, and Commissioner James and Commissioner Ayers is also in attendance.
That's correct. Yeah, I can state that the meeting is being held pursuant to notice and in accordance with the provisions of the state's open meeting law and executive law section 94. Both the conference room we're using here at the New York State Conference Center at 25 Beaver Street in Manhattan and the conference room in the commission's offices in Albany at 540 Broadway are open to the public during this open session. The meeting is also being live streamed, and the link for the live stream can be found on the Commission's website at ethics.ny.gov. And I can state that a quorum of committee members are present in person here in New York. And let me say this. This meeting is an opportunity for Commission staff to brief the committee and bring it up to date on the status of the Commission's ethics training program and the fulfillment of the ethics training mandate set forth in Executive Law Section 94 and in Article 1-A of the legislative law. It's also an opportunity to review the challenges we're facing, the steps we've taken and plan to take to address them, to provide the committee with information about the accomplishments to date in our training effort. And the accomplishments, not just of staff, but of the network of ethics officers, trainers, and others throughout the state's executive branch who are part of the overall ethics training effort. And if I may, staff has prepared a slide deck. Marlena Diaz is our Senior Deputy Director for Training Management and is in charge of, under the new reorganized plan, is in charge of the Commission's training efforts, both with respect to workforce ethics training and lobbyist and client ethics training, as well as assisting all the operating units in their various training endeavors and efforts. That we're going to cover the two plans that now overlap for executing the Commission's training mission. We have the 2022, the inception plan, 2022 through 2025 training plan. And we have the 2025 through 2028 plan as well, the action plan that the Commission adopted earlier this year. And if we can go to the first slide, Marlena. In contrast, and I'll do this quickly, we've gone through this before and everybody's familiar with it, but just to have the background, prior to ECRA, under the prior Ethics Act, PIRA, the Public Integrity Reform Act of 2011, ethics training was mandated for policymakers and so-called threshold filers, those who file financial disclosure statements in the executive branch, as well as certain legislators. Roughly 30,000 individuals fell into that pool after an initial comprehensive ethics training. That group was required to take refresher training every 3 years. That was in effect from more or less the mid 2010 period on until ECRA was enacted in 2022. ECRA calls for every employee, every official, every officer, statewide elected official, the entire legislature and legislative staff to receive ethics training, either live or on demand every year. That's roughly a 30-fold increase in the number of trainings to be conducted annually. By our estimation, and it's a moving target because the size of the state workforce fluctuates constantly. But we're looking at something in the neighborhood of 330,000 individuals who are required to receive ethics training every year, either online or on demand. We go to the, we'll stick with this slide. Ethics training is now a dispersed function. The commission staff is now training roughly 20,000 individuals live online annually. I'd like to increase that number, but we're looking at something like that. The remaining trainings conducted either on demand, and we now have several vehicles, and we'll talk about those, for supplying on-demand training. And the plan is to make that availability even more robust as we move along. But the live training component is largely undertaken, and the burden of that is largely borne at the agency level by agency ethics officers, agency trainers, in some instances, agency general counsel. We, COELIG, our education unit, provide, our ethics division, provide the format, the content, and platforms for providing the live training. But the administration of the live training, by and large, is conducted at the agency level on the live side. We are supporting that effort. We have built, in conjunction with State Information Technology Service, an application, calling it CETA, statewide ethics training application. To support that effort, by tracking trainings, making it possible to schedule the trainings, provide reminder notices for the trainings, and provide at the agency level, as well as at the commission level, information about who needs to be trained, who has completed training, who is late in completing training, and in moving the training protocols along. Do the same thing on the lobbyist side. On the lobbyist side, we can track the training within our lobbying application, the main application that tracks lobbying filings, and also houses the profiles for those who are involved in lobbying activity, as well as their registration statements. So that is tracked there, as opposed to in the CETA application. Can we go to the next slide? Or later. Under the statute, under Section 94, new entrants into the state workforce are required to complete a live, comprehensive ethics training course within 90 days of commencing state employment. There's something of a lag between the time individuals are onboarded and the time their data is entered into the CETA system. Our goal is to track every new employee coming in and to ensure that they're receiving live training, whether from us, from commission staff, or from training staff at their employing agencies. In addition to that, for the initial period of time, as the system has been implemented, the training system has been implemented, the commission authorized the program with a target of every state employee, new and existing state employee, including those who had received training under the old system, those who were policymakers or threshold filers, as well as those who were not in that pool, regardless of when they entered the workforce, to complete one training, whether on demand or live training, by the end of 2024. The other component in the program authorized by the Commission for that initial period through the end of this year, 2025, is that by the end of this year, every member of the workforce, regardless of when they join the workforce, regardless of their status, that is, as policymaker, threshold filer, or otherwise, complete a full training cycle. We've defined a full training cycle to mean either 2 live online, comprehensive ethics training courses completed, or 1 live, 1 on-demand program. They can be taken in any sequence, but the requirement is that 2 courses be completed. And again, either 2 live or 1 live and 1 on-demand by the end of this year. Next slide.
Sandy, will you receive my action? Just a few quick questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there funding for training at the agency level? Where do they get their funding from in order to execute their part of the program?
Agencies receive their funding the same way, the Commission does, through the normal budgetary process. It's up to agencies to budget for staff commensurate with their demands.
Are they required to do that, or is it just if they think it works for their budget for any particular year, or are they required to put in X amount of money for training?
Well, it's an interesting question. Under ECRA, there's no specific funding that's provided. The only entity that receives funding, more or less, in conjunction with ECRA, and that was in our initial budget, was our agency. But every agency receives funding again. They put it, they submit a budget. It's their obligation to make sure that they're staffing and there are other requirements.
And it hasn't been an issue.
I would not say it's not been an issue. I would venture to say it's like every other burden that's imposed on an agency, or every obligation, or every mandate. It's one that fits into their overall plan. It's a burden on us, but it's one of our obligations. It's the obligation of every agency to maintain staffing commensurate with their needs. Every agency does have, and they may not have a unique ethics officer. They may share an ethics officer with group agencies, or a parent agency. But every agency has access. I think the total is something like 285 ethics officers, roughly by our count, from our ethics forums. That's the number we have. They also have, larger agencies have larger training staff. And remember, as we do, the training that employees receive, the trainings that employees receive in state service, are by no means limited to ethics training. So they're
I see.
functional trainings, they're occupational trainings, they're safety trainings, they're all sorts of trainings that all of us, all state employees, take every year that are mandated.
Thank you.
Depending upon where their agency falls. But the answer is, every agency should have in its budget sufficient funding to cover those needs.
You just mentioned that we fund, that our staff trains about 20,000, and the rest.
We're targeting about 20,000 this year. And last year we trained roughly 17,000. The number's going up.
At 20,000, and the bulk is trained at the agency level. How is that determined? How do we determine the 20,000 that we train? Is it just random, or?
We have grown the size of our internal staff, titrated as best we can to the needs of agencies. So we are making it available as many classes as we can fill. We can talk about this in greater detail. Our classes are not filling up. So we're comfortable that to the extent agencies are looking to us to supply the live component of the training, we're matching that need. At the same time, we want to increase the demand, and we want to make sure, and that's why this initial 3-year plus period is so important. It's an opportunity for the commission, for us to learn what agency needs are, and for agencies to tell us what support they need from us in meeting the training mandate. But our classes are not filling up, and it may be partly because supply is greater than the demand, but it may be that the demand needs to increase. That's one of the things we're working on. We'll be talking about.
Thank you.
So this slide shows the numbers we've developed. The period 2022, 2023 exceeds CETA. So we didn't have full capabilities for taking in employee-specific training data. But one of the essential features of CETA, of the application, is that it tracks training completion at the individual employee level. And it allows the commission to know levels of compliance, who needs training, who hasn't received it, who has received it, which agencies are doing really well, which agencies can perhaps do better in their employees into compliance with the requirement. It tracks both on-demand training completions as well as live training completions. On the live side, because many agencies conduct live trainings on site. And for other reasons, agencies have to add the information into the system. We're moving toward our goal is to have on the on-demand side, everything automatically populated. We're not quite at that point yet. Orlando can go into exhaustive detail where we stand with respect to that part of it. That kind of data collection capability didn't become available to us in a serious way until June of 2024, when CETA became fully operational. And then we had to populate it with data. And the data population itself is a whole separate project. A lot of our information comes from information maintained by the Controller's Office, and we have a series of memoranda of understanding, not only with the Controller's Office, but with various agencies to allow us to collect that data. Not every employee is within a body, an agency within state government that's served by the Office of the State Controller. So we have outlying agencies. We'll talk about the amount of data we have, but all of that was coming into the system starting in 2024. So for the earlier period, that 159,489, very precise figure, is information that we collected literally by outreach to individual agencies. It's not information, and Marlene, correct me if I'm overstating this or understating it. It's not information we have at the individual employee level. It's an aggregate number. Once we get into the later periods, into 2024 and 2025, the information is more granular.
Correct. So I hope you all can hear me. So yes, this slide illustrates just all agency reported aggregate data. So for 2022, 2023, the data, in my opinion, wasn't as reliable as we have now in 2024. There was a lot of misunderstanding as to what COELIG was actually asking for with regards to training statistics. We still to this day have a lot of agencies who are confused generally about the mandate with regards to that we're not operating under COPE, we're not operating under the JCOPE rules. We literally just had an outreach meeting last week where we learned that the ethics officer had retired, just to kind of give you an example, and the entire agency was running under COPE rules. So their folks they were only targeting threshold overfilers, these folks that make above the salary requirement in FCS, and they were only trying to train those folks. So if you could imagine, it was a 2 to 3 hour outreach call, and this happens all the time. So with regards to these numbers, it's just agency reported. The more reliable figures started occurring in 2024, as Sandy stated, and again in 2025. But once again, these are aggregate figures. We don't know if these individuals have left state service. We don't know if these individuals are still active, and we don't have the ability to understand whether or not these employees took the correct training, depending on what cycle they were on, if they took more than one training. So the numbers, the aggregate numbers are great, but it also doesn't really complete the picture in terms of highlighting to us what's happening on the agency level with regards to that.
So that's for 2022-23 number. That's for the 159.
Correct.
Yes.
I mean, we can't tie it back to specific individuals. It's
We cannot.
The reason, but we'll go on the slide, but the reason it's important is because there are two things that we're endeavoring to do in this initial 3-year plus period. It's, of course, comply with the statutory mandate to see to it that every member of the workforce is receiving ethics training, receiving it fairly frequently, compared with prior requirements. The second part is to allow the structure overall to build itself up to the point where it has the capability of meeting that requirement. So again, there are two things happening. One is actually doing the training, but it's also learning what the existing capability is and building additional capability as necessary to ensure that when we come out of this I'm calling it a sort of initial shakeout period, that we have some confidence that the systems are in place to provide the annual training to 330,000 people, to keep track of it, and to have a system that will be sustaining year after year and providing training to those who need it. We also don't want to be training the same individual multiple times. There's only so much capacity in a given year. So we want to make sure, we want to get to the point where every employee, when they're due for on-demand training, gets an on-demand training. When they're due for live training, they get live training. If there are agencies that have lots of capacity and they want to do lots of live training, we're not going to prevent them from doing that. But it's not a requirement.
Yeah.
And some agencies do, for whatever reason, think it's more effective from their perspective, or just more convenient or more practical. Do live trainings every year.
I just guess I was struck by the point that when you had your orientation or your outreach meeting, that there are people still operating under JACO and didn't realize after our existence for 3 years that new mandates are in place. How does that happen? I mean,
apparently an ethics officer who had been instructed didn't pass along that wisdom when they moved on. That's the only explanation.
Is that widespread?
It happens more than you would think. It happens more than you would think. Even at this late in the game, I want to say that me and my team, we probably have similar conversations at least once a month, depending on the turnover. You know, I like to call them agency barriers and resource guarding. That's kind of internally what my team, we've kind of amounted to. You have a lot of ethics officers who, for whatever reason, are either misinformed or the mandate as a whole is overwhelming for them. So unfortunately, in many situations that we found, they're not readily communicating, let's say, with their HR staff. They're not working collaboratively amongst themselves in the agency in order to kind of communicate these things. So if one person is administratively in charge of training for an agency and for whatever reason, that agency is either misinformed or requires assistance, we won't know about that until there's obviously turnover, and that's what happened in this case. This individual retired, then HR had to step in to fill in that temporary gap when they communicated to us, and we reached out to them based off of their low training numbers and the figure. In the system, we realized that they had a much larger problem than they knew about. So this happens quite often.
Thank you.
You'll see. The system goal is twofold. One is to monitor how well agencies are doing at the agency level in fulfilling the requirements. So those kind of aggregate statistics. But we also want to have the capability, and we do have the capability. It's not complete because the data is not complete yet, of being able to monitor compliance at the individual employee and have the ability now, and it's not inexpensive to do this, to notify individuals when their trainings are due, and to schedule their trainings individually, and to ensure that they complete it when they need. One of the reasons why we need the granular data. We don't need a lot of data about individuals, but we need enough to identify where they work and how to contact them. That's something of a challenge. We still don't have, and there's no singular source we can go to get it. Tried. Don't have contact information for probably over half the workforce, Marlena, at this point.
So if we're only focusing on the employee data, the individual employee data that we receive from the OSC payroll file that manages most executive branch and all SUNY campus employee data, we have approximately 260,000 individual names, but we have less than half of that with regards to email addresses. So that obviously creates a barrier for us. And as Sandy indicated, it's not in one universal place. And sometimes based off of our outreach calls with these individual campuses or entities, we learn that oftentimes either the ethics officer, training staff at the respective agency, or even HR isn't able to access that information, that requires different layers on the agency level. That's once again why I'm calling them these agency barriers, where they have to then go to their external ITS folks and see if they can gather that information that way. So for us in training, it's an incredible challenge because we'd like to be able to do more direct outreach to employees, letting them know directly, kind of bypassing the ethics officer, kind of bypassing training units in HR who may not be doing the best job in communicating to their employees that the training requirement is a yearly requirement and what training classes they're due for. We here at training, my training team, we're trying to handle more of that administrative work, but we're unable to do so because we don't have the data to be able to kind of help us in those outreach initiatives. We can only contact the people that we know. And as I mentioned, out of 260,000 names that we have in the system, we have less than half of those email addresses. So it creates a barrier for us and a barrier with regards to agencies, and also helping us facilitate communications and outreach and direct outreach to those employees.
Yeah, of course.
Is it, I mean, your efforts are commendable, but I just, in the back of my head, I'm thinking they don't have any skin in the game. You know, why, what's the incentive for them to respond or to be up to make themselves aware of what the expectations are? And I'm just wondering, would it make sense to be in touch with with the department heads as opposed to the ethics officers so that they understand the importance of their staff making sure ethics is a priority?
Yeah, and we've implemented that system. We had an ethics forum over the summer. We explained to the ethics officers that that's our next step.
Right.
That in addition to our quarterly and annual reporting, which goes to the legislature and the governor, which, among other things, shows how well or less well agencies are doing in complying with the requirement. We're also implementing a system of reaching out to agency heads, general counsel, to deal with the situation. On the other side, where we're talking about potential legislative fixes, we're not quite there yet. One thing that's lurking in the background is the possibility of some kind of penalty for completing compliance. But we really, before we go to that extent, we want to know, where we can improve, where agencies can improve. Correctly.
I think on behalf, if I could just make a comment on behalf of the agencies, I don't necessarily think it's a matter of them not having skin in the game. I think the issue for them is that, and this is what we've heard in our one-on-one outreach calls, this is what we've heard in our weekly email communications to our agency partners, is that the administration for many of these agencies as a whole is overwhelming. And you have a lot of staff in these positions who unfortunately also suffer from certain technological barriers in where they don't think the application is easy for them to use. A lot of the data, unfortunately, has to be manually ingested. The application in itself is not automated. So what do I mean by that? Even the OSC payroll file, that monthly file, it's not something that happens automatically. If you think about it, a virtual file ends up somewhere in the cloud. Our ITS person grabs that virtual file and then uploads that information. We don't have a central learning management system, and that's the biggest challenge for these folks who are in charge of administering the training program. And despite our best efforts in encouraging them to actually view and utilize the data that's in the application, we've noticed here in training that they're kind of blindly communicating and blindly enrolling folks into training, which later on becomes problematic. I won't get too much into that there, but the administration portion is very challenging for them. And as you had mentioned earlier, Commissioner Edwards, they don't have budget in place. Some of these organizations are now putting like a trainer in there, somebody that is similar to either my role or to a training associate role that can kind of handle the administration, the day-to-day tracking, the day-to-day of entering completion information, uploading an updated HR roster, to give you an example, uploading email files, let's say, entering completion dates, all of that that goes on in the system that takes time away from them being able to do their day-to-day job, or frankly, they're just not qualified to do because that's not in their skill set. But some of these organizations are trying to hire people who could better fit into that role, into that capacity, but unfortunately, statewide, we're all having budgetary issues, and they're doing the best that they can. A lot of these folks just have technological barriers. You could explain to them multiple times how to utilize the system, but unfortunately we get to the point where we realize we've kind of hit a wall, and we try, COELIG here, my team tries to be able to do a lot of that administration on their behalf, but that also creates challenges for us when we're consistently trying to push the mandate and our initiative forward.
Right, on the next slide, and there are a series of these. These are the objectives that have been set by the Commission for this initial 3-year plus period. Talked about the actual administration of the training and where we stand, top row. Talked about the CETA system that's now in place. Again, it's not fully populated, as Marlena pointed out. Even for the 250,000 employees for whom we have information in the system, at least half of them we don't have contact information other than through their agencies, through their ethics officers. We don't have direct contact information, and that limits our ability to communicate directly with them. Something we're continuing to work on. Developing a multi-platform on-demand CETC refresher module or modules. We now have the SLMS-based module, which was introduced in November of 2023. Limitation with that is not all state agencies, executive branch agencies, have access to SLMS or SLMS-like systems. About 60% of executive branch agencies, and some of the SUNYs and CUNYs, but not all, have analogous systems that can use that module. In 2024, we started working on coming up with alternative formats for that. Make that possible. We now have introduced this year an MP4 version that can play, if you will, on virtually any system and can be accessed on our website. We have a certification system in place as well to keep track of the data, and that will become more automated in terms of data tracking. Will work quite well, we believe, and we're still developing more sophisticated modules. We talked about the work we're having done at PDP in Rockefeller College to create an HTML module that will have features that we can't have in the MP4 version of it. We want to have that. What are we looking at now, the end of the year, Marlena? For PDP?
Correct. I think it's more early in the rate that they're going and the pace that they're moving. I anticipate more January 2026. I don't see the end of the year. It's aspirational for me, but I'd love to see it by the end of the year if possible.
But that will be somewhat more sophisticated than the MP4. Content will be the same. Commissioner?
Are we pushing, like, we have this MP version that we knew there were agencies that significant numbers of their employees didn't have access to the other system. So are we reaching out to the agencies who sort of were saying a lot of our employees didn't have access and telling them, like, you got 3 months, like, this is the time for you to push those employees to take this,
Yes, absolutely.
this module?
Yeah, and beyond that, we're sending out, we'll get to it, to the extent we can identify the individuals who are eligible to take the MP4 version, meaning they haven't taken
Right.
an on-demand before, so they can, if they've taken a live, now they're due for that, or they haven't taken anything. We're reaching out directly to them and providing the link, but the numbers are limited that we can reach directly. But there is a big push, and statistically, there should be a very substantial number of employees who between now and the end of the year complete their requirements.
That's what I'm hoping,
Right, by accessing the MP4 version.
And we're on top of those agencies and those ethics officers and those.
Yeah, Marlena, you can recount the efforts we're going through now to push out.
Yeah, I'd love to. No, this is a great question, and this is a great direction in conversation. So I appreciate the question. So just to kind of give you a snapshot of what we're doing, I think the MP4 provided a lot of flexibility. I do not recommend that we take that down, even when we have the fully compatible HTML accessible SCORM package. I think it would be a bad move for our other agency partners for us to eliminate the MP4, and here's why. We have a lot of folks that work in these smaller boards and commissions, even these larger boards and commissions, that don't operate under a general, they're mobile employees. To give you an example, we have one of our agency users who was thrilled that we had access to the MP4 because he was able to train a group of his bus drivers using the MP4. So we need to be able to remain flexible for those agencies who can't have individual employees that, number one, don't have email addresses and wouldn't be able to self-enroll in an online on-demand training. They need that flexibility today, and they need that flexibility in the future to be able to do so. But to circle back to your question, we do targeted outreach all of the time. So to give you an example, in our weekly communications, we let specific agencies know who did not have access to SLMS, that statewide learning management system only accessible to executive branch employees, that we had this on-demand training program now, that at the time they could access via our commission website. We uploaded that video go onto YouTube. They were able to access it that way. They also had access to our COELIG Education Resource Center, which is our COELIG-hosted SharePoint site that's available to around 300 to 400 different agency users across the state. So they could download that information as well, including the PDF attestations. When we launch the online certifications, we notify them pretty much every week. We have a weekly communication, we have a monthly communication, and in addition to that, we also provide monthly and weekly data snapshots to all of our agency users. In addition to that, we also do customized outreach where we will target those agency users who we know are not part of that OSC payroll file and remind them once again that we have these resources available to provide them with flexibility for those employees who are eligible to take the on-demand this year. In addition to that, we kind of want to move away as a 2026 and future goal. We kind of want to move away from the statewide learning management system and kind of force employees that have employee data in the system, who have state-issued email addresses, to be able to do their online training directly from SETA. And here's why. Because if that employee completed online training the year prior, now we have the ability, assuming that they entered the correct information in, to be able to say, hi, we're sorry, but you took online training last year. You need to take a live training. Here's our complete calendar of live training availability. So we want to be able to kind of direct employees to the correct training that they need to take. But to close the loop on your question, we do outreach all of the time to these agencies, letting them know. We even do customized spreadsheets. So if I know your employee data in the system, I will take your entire roster and break it up for you into 2 tabs. And my staff does this every single day, multiple times a day, letting ethics officers, training staff, HR departments know that this group of employees need to take live training this year. This group of employees we're showing that are eligible to take online, and here's how you get them enrolled. Here's how we can help you. Here are the resources that we have. Please get your folks trained because the 12/31 deadline is coming up.
Thank you. And the last item is covered, the notification. Develop on-demand lobbyist client training module. So that's on the lobbying ethics side. Our goal is to enhance that next year. Lobbying training is still on a 3-year cycle. As you know from our legislative agenda, past legislative agendas, we would like to see that on a 2-year cycle to correspond to the biannual registration cycle that we have for lobbying. But whatever reason, it's currently on a 3-year cycle, our statute. And it makes sense to do the enhancements when the next cycle of training. Most lobbyists who are in the system completed their training with the existing module. So we're going to target getting that out next year in a revised form. We've done a lot of work on the certification process. We've changed some of the regs to facilitate that. We do need to do more outreach. We do need to maybe look at some other remedies for ensuring that we get 100% lobbyists and clients. And that's strictly on demand. But the enhancements that we've talked about, having, requiring in order to complete the module, individuals would have to properly answer training questions. That is something we're talking about doing in 2025, but in terms of resources and in terms of time pressure, it makes sense to implement that for 2026. And the next slide.
So that's like a new goal for 25.
Well, it's always something we had as an objective. Some commissioners, and we agreed. One of those enhancements added, but I think over 80% those required to take the course have already taken it. So, in terms of just our priorities and the effort that goes into creating the new modules, it makes sense to do that with an introduction. in the next cycle. And we have increased our staffing in the unit. Aspirationally, we're looking at having 4 trainers. We've streamlined the administrative, the management structure so that we have senior deputy, director of the unit, waiting for the approval of BDA by Division of Budget. For an assistant director of the unit will also be able to assist with training, help with training management generally, as well as in the way we push out the trainings and some of the data we can collect in the trainings. The individual is quite well qualified in that respect. And then the goal originally had been to have 2 training assistants. Marlena has reconfigured that now, so we'll have 1 training assistant and 1 data specialist to assist with some of the data needs, and that'll take some of the data keeping, record keeping pressure off the trainers themselves and free them up to do more training.
You know, I'm definitely supportive of increasing staff in this area. But I just was wondering, you mentioned earlier that our demand is not as high as what we had expected. So if we're not filling up, does this impact your need for additional staff?
You know, it's a question of whether the demand is where it should be. And that's one of the things we're trying to figure out in this initial period. How much support do agencies need with respect to the live training? Our trainers are specifically conducting the live online training. And they're doing 2. They're doing the general training that fully satisfies the requirement for live training for the entire workforce. And then they're doing trainings, and they have dedicated sessions adapted to the needs of individual agencies. So if agencies want us to focus more heavily on a particular area that impacts that agency's work, or maybe change some of the examples that are used in the course of the training, we do that. The demand for that, I would say, is relatively high. What we're finding is we've scheduled a lot of courses. We want to get to the end of the year and hit our target. And the courses are not always fully subscribed. And I guess the other issue is have folks sign up for courses and not show up. And that's an issue we have to deal with. It's sort of like overbooking on airlines. You know, how far do you go? And I think we can probably accommodate more people in classes. We're prepared to do it. I don't want to say that we're preparing to overstaff. I think part of it is working with agencies to identify individuals in their respective workforces who need to take the online training and getting them scheduled. So we know that that's working as effectively as it should. We're not really going to be able to judge how much support they need.
And that's because we can't directly access them. We don't have, for example, those who don't have emails, we can't directly access. So it doesn't give you access to your full market. Is that
correct? I would say that that's one of the issues. I mean, our training associates are comprised of, highly talented individuals. They're just not responsible for delivering training. As you've heard me say multiple times, the easiest part of the mandate is delivering the CETC, that live 2-hour training. That's the easiest part of the mandate. The most challenging part for here for COELIG, for my staff, myself included especially, and for agencies, is the administration part of it. That's the most challenging part. That's really where the need arises for staff. Because our training associates, I'll give you an example. So during the summer, we decided that we were going to provide agency users, and I know I use that term a lot, but it's just meant to encompass our ethics officers, our training staff, and HR units, within our partner agencies. We decided that we were going to provide them with our full training calendar from September through December. We internally here, my team, calculated that based off of enrollment numbers, we can accommodate up to 400 employees remotely per session. we set a personal goal for ourselves that we would be able to train around 21,000 employees between September and December. For September and October, and October's new, we were at half enrollment, which means that out of 400 employees we could train at one time, we were only receiving maybe 200. And that's when we really started to also ramp up those weekly notifications. To give you an example, for the first week in October, we noticed that our enrollment figures, despite the fact that we already had that availability up for months, we only had 32 people on average signing up for our classes. So we continue to do more direct outreach, sending out those weekly reminders, sending out reminders sometimes even twice a week, and we were able to kind of boost up those numbers to 300, 400. But on average, if we have a full class capacity of 400 employees, about a third don't show. About a third of those employees are no-shows every time.
And employees can be signed up by their agencies. Individuals come to us to sign up. We don't have a system, and it's one thing we have to think about of arbitrarily, once we have the information, signing individuals up. You're due for training, you've been scheduled for such and such time. They give folks an opportunity to reschedule if it's not going to work in terms of the work schedules. But, only so many adjournments, that kind of thing.
I just don't.
We're not at that point yet.
Yeah, but I just, the staff, I think, sounds like they're doing as much as they can to encourage people to sign up and take their training. I still think the issue's on the other end, where there's just no incentive to do it. Well, I would say there's no incentive to do it. With all the demands that people have in the workplace now, and with all the budget cuts and all of that, this can't be a priority for some of them.
Well, we think it is. Our position is not only is it a technical requirement.
If so many people are not showing up, and with all of what staff is doing to get people to sign up, it doesn't happen, then what else can you conclude by the fact that it's got to be on the other end?
It may be, and that's one of the things we want to assess. We also want to assess whether, ultimately it's a question of effective communication. Individuals should understand that it's not merely a technical requirement, it's something that actually helps them. Because individuals, and really regardless of where they are in the workforce, have challenges, and there are opportunities, among other things, to get in trouble if you make wrong choices. And the main goal of the ethics training, even the repetitive ethics training, is not to make individuals experts in state ethics law and regulation. It's to help them identify potential issues, to avoid traps, to avoid pitfalls, to avoid getting in trouble. And their self-interest, therefore, is served by taking ethics training. And we need to work on effectively communicating that message. It's not just to satisfy the higher ups. It's not just to satisfy COELIG. It's not just to satisfy some abstract requirement. It's to help individuals out. Our end goal is that we want people not to get in trouble. We have the ability to conduct enforcement actions, but that's not what we want to be doing. That should always be the exception. We maintain an AOTD, or Attorney of the Day hotline, and we've increased the capacity there. Plus, we want to be available in real time to help people out, to answer questions. But if they don't reach out to us, if they don't know to reach out to us, it's not going to happen. And there are questions, is there a saturation point? We don't know. Is there a better cycle than annual? We don't know. But not having the training clearly is a problem. And I think it was correct to require that everybody have some level of ethics training. And whether live every other year is the optimal way to do it, we don't know. But we need to have it move up as a priority. And there are probably lots of reasons why it isn't. And part of it may just be becoming accustomed to the requirement. There are lots of trainings that folks have to take every year, every month. and somehow they managed to find the time for it. So we just have to be part of that regular, course of events. It's something that you take.
Sandy, Commissioner Tarabayo has a question.
Thank you. So, yeah, my question is, we talked about this, the last education committee we had, public service announcements, because I'm sure, I'm sure a lot of people, like we were just talking about, don't understand that they are required to do this now. And so, just having a little thing on the train or, where it's or public transportation, it's just talking about, like, do you know you're supposed to do this kind of thing? I wonder if that would be helpful. Because sometimes you're sitting there doing nothing and you get this and you're like, wow, am I supposed to really do that? I'm just throwing that out there again.
No, I think that's something definitely that Megan Hennigan, our former Deputy Director of Education, definitely tried to have those initial conversations by having a lot of, let's say, like posters and visuals put down in the concourse where we have a lot of traffic from the 4 towers of the state agencies, and that just didn't seem as if something that was possible at the time. I think it's twofold. I think what you're mentioning is absolutely correct, and it's something that we should try to do as best as we can. But the other issue that we have, like the other side of the coin to that, is even though we're training a lot of these folks, we're still having a lot of resistance from employees with regards to buy-in, and that's something that we really need to be able to address, because a lot of these folks consistently in their evaluations or in their chat messages to us or private messages to us will say, I don't know why I was signed up for this training. This really has nothing to do with me. I see patients all day, as an example. I'm a faculty adjunct member of a CUNY campus as a different example. What does this have to do with me? And obviously here we try to message as consistently as possible. Well, you chose to take a job in public service. Your actual role or title may not have this direct nexus where you may be involved in an outside activity, as an example, or you have to worry about political activities in the workplace or things of that area, but you selected a job in public service that requires you to have an awareness of all of these ethics laws. So the buy-in still, at this late in the game, is also a challenge. And I think you might have seen that a little bit in the public hearing as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, but all of these are things that we need to pursue. Maybe more can be done in the onboarding process when new employees come into the workforce. Former agencies have placards they distributed to agencies and posted. Yeah, how effective those are in encouraging compliance with the training requirement, remains to be seen. But all of it adds up. All of these things have budgetary implications as well. But nothing's off the table. All of these things are things that we want to look at moving forward.
The chair has a question. The chair has a question, Sandy.
Yeah, so I understand that you notify the agencies, but is there a way for this notification of the required training to go to each individual member of the state employee force?
At this time, no. And I don't see that being rectified in 26. I don't really see that being rectified in 27 or even possibly 28, because we're only provided with the data that we are provided with, right? So let's say for the OSC agencies, for those folks, those 260,000 names, as I've mentioned, we only have half of those email addresses. Now, to be fair, a lot of employees are also not provided, with state-issued email addresses for whatever reason, because their job may not require it for, numerous reasons. So we can only, unfortunately, communicate with those that we can communicate with. So what we're trying to do here at training is kind of get a little bit creative with our outreach. So we are in the process of testing these new outreach templates. So for those employees in our system, and again, we can only reach those names of employees that we have, any employee that doesn't have an email address associated to their employee profile and does not have a training completion date also in their employee profile, we're trying to compile a customized spreadsheet to those agency users on a regular basis so that we're kind of spoon feeding them the information. All of that information is readily available to them in all of the reports that we provide to them. The biggest barrier for us is actually getting these folks to log into the system and take a look at which employees are due, which employees completed training. It's a huge struggle for us here at COELIG, especially in the training unit, to encourage these folks to utilize the data that we do have today. So in order to kind of mitigate that issue, what we're trying to do is actually just spoon feed them the information and say, okay, since you're not going into the system, what information can we kind of compile for you in a way that's just right up front to your face so that you can see out of 600 employees, you need to target these 400 and enroll them in training. We don't have email addresses for them, so we want you to do two things for us. One, provide us with the email addresses so that we can upload that information on your behalf in our system. And number two, inform these particular groups of employees that we have no way of notifying and enroll them in either our live training or in our on-demand training, whether that's watching an MP4 video, doing in a group setting, what have you.
You can't mail them so that you can't mail to their home addresses or use their home emails?
We don't have that data. So we do not ask for home addresses. That's outside of the scope of the data that we are provided. So what we are allowed to ask for with regards to data points is your employee ID number, your identifying number, your first name, your last name, an email address, and a hire date if you're outside of that OSC payroll. Other than that, we're not able to ask you anything else.
That's legislatively driven, or?
It may be something that requires a legislative fix. There may be other ways to do it. We may be able to do it by regulation. Maybe one thing we can consider is requiring that employees, when they're onboarded, enroll in the training system and provide us with that contact information so we have it directly.
I think you would get a lot of pushback from agencies with regards to privacy if you start asking for employee home addresses. It just seems outside of the scope of what we need to mandate the training, and also brings up questions about cost. It would be a lot of money for the state as a whole to start trying to communicate to employees via snail mail as well. I don't see that as a feasible option. I think, in fact, it would probably create even more agency barriers than we have right now.
Yeah, I mean, we could do the enrollment using state email addresses for those who are assigned. Again, we have a pool of individuals who don't have that kind of contact information.
Our vice chair has a question.
Oh, never mind. I'm good. Thanks.
There are also individuals who don't have access to technology, so they can do the live trainings, but it's a challenge for them to be in an environment where they can do on-demand training. That's an issue we've encountered as well. Unless there are questions. Next is dealing with requests for exceptions, modifications of the training requirement. See on the next slide. We've dealt with that. The commission has now adopted the Part 939 regulations. If you go 2 slides in, you'll see that the September meeting, rulemaking began, and we had emergency adoption beginning in March of regulations to deal with the waiver and exception process. It's a couple of slides in. So it's
Increase colon training admin.
no, it's the 2025 objectives current status, the second page of that,
Okay.
which I believe is slide 8.
Okay.
Well, let's just work ahead toward it. We'll get there. Next is to develop online question and answer courses specific to agency ethics officers. Marlena can address this in detail. But the The unit has been conducting on a regular basis ethics officer forums, and have provided lots of information to ethics officers to aid them in administering the program, as well as having vehicles to respond to their questions. And the end goal here is to ensure that between our agency and the individual agencies, the capability is there to execute the training required. Go to the next slide. Where we are for this year goal, and it's going to be the goal every year going forward, is to deliver roughly 330,000 live on-demand trainings. Hopefully we've got the workforce more or less divided in two, so the live capability at any given year is about half that number. Have a steady state. It's probably useful to agencies not to have that fluctuate. It may vary from agency to agency. Maybe there's some agencies that would prefer to do all of their live trainings in 1 year. Take a year off and just have on demand for their employees. But by and large, I think it makes more sense to have a capability that matches about half of the workforce in terms of delivering live training. And in any given year, have half the workforce taking the on-demand course.
At 220, at 152, 316 is 2 quarters of 2025, which means you're on target to meet your goal of 300,000 at the end of the year.
Unfortunately, it's the calendar year, and so we're
3 quarters.
we're 9 months in. We're 3/4, 2/3 of the way.
So you do your basic
Into the year, and that number is probably not complete. There are probably other completions that will drift in over time. You know, as you've seen month to month in the monthly operations reports, there's a time lag. The time courses are taken and data is entered into the system.
So we've got to adjust that number down then at some point, because you can't meet based on all the barriers that you have in front of you. You can't do 330 a year.
You know, that's the question.
I mean,
and that's the question we need to confront. I think in actuality, we have to dig into the data. It's probably not as, I would hope it's not as dire as it looks like. By getting more attention paid to the on-demand, up to now, the majority of the training has been live. The on-demand didn't become available until very late in 2023. Started being more heavily utilized last year, but still the emphasis was on live training. This year, the on-demand, do you have the on-demand number out of that 152, Marlena? The on-demand has not been as well utilized as we think it could be at this point. So we were looking at.
So there's also several factors that need to be addressed when understanding the on-demand figures. So around 90,000, we have recorded around 90,000 completions for the on-demand that's available on the statewide learning management system. But for your awareness, we have multiple agencies who have made policy decisions to only offer live training. So one of the largest entities that we have are our correctional facilities. They encompass around over 30,000 employees. And, you know, the executives in their agencies have made the decision that they only want live training. Do they have access to FLIMS? Sure. Are they utilizing FLIMS to do on-demand online training? No, because they prefer to be able to do online training. You also have other larger agencies like the MTA who have made decisions for themselves that they don't want COELIG training their own staff. They want to be able to train their own staff using their own online on demand in addition to conducting their own live training. So that's a different population, of employees that have, a different situation there. But there are a lot of agencies. We do have a lot of medical facilities that also prefer to just do live training every single year. So it's not that it's underutilized, it's that a lot of agencies, because they don't want to deal with the every other year live scenario, have just made an executive decision that it's easier for them with regards to tracking administration to just have everyone take live training every single year.
Yeah, so we have the two poles. So we have the MTA, which is doing primarily on demand with a course that we've approved, and that we're satisfied with. It also satisfies their labor management agreements and so on.
So you'll meet your numbers, but you may not meet the different components like on demand, but you'll meet your number. You still do 3.
Well, I don't think we're going to reach the number without the on-demand number going up. We still have 4
Based
months.
on her scenario, if the demand on demand goes down, the live training should go up. Because she said that they prefer to do.
Well, if those agencies, in addition to wanting to only do live training, have the capability to deliver the live training. And that's training that they're delivering themselves. If they would let us assist them with that, and they pull off the 2 live trainings, I think statistically they probably could. Whether they're willing to cede that to us, remains to be seen. But yeah, if they do that, yes. But my point is, if you look at the statistics we had at the last commission meeting for completions through the end of August, of the combined total of 131,000 trainings that had been completed up to that time. So we've got another month under our belt, which is how we get to 152. Fewer than 26,000 of those were on-demand trainings. And to the extent some of those are taking their first course, they're eligible to take on-demand second course. The on-demand, I don't want to say it's unlimited. I'm sure you can max out the system somehow. But you don't have the scheduling issues in logging on. It's a somewhat quicker course. It's a substantially quicker course. Covers all of the material that needs to be covered, but it does it more concisely, if you will. So it's 35 minutes, give or take, to take that course, under 40 minutes. I think with greater emphasis on the on-demand, and we have to deal with those agencies that prefer live. It satisfies the requirement. We can get closer to it. Can we achieve the 330 or really get to the 660 total, that total period of time? So from 2022 through the end of this year, can we get to 660,000? We're now at almost at 500,000. But we'll see how close we can get. And maybe we'll hit it. But, I think we don't have an exact number, partly because we can't identify individually the individuals who took training before the CETA system was up. It becomes difficult. But we had no on-demand until late in 2023. So the overwhelming number of those were live trainings, and they're individuals who are eligible to take demand training. And we have about half of the population who took training in 2024 should be eligible to take. We took live in that period of time, who can now take on demand. So it's a fair population.
Oh, yes.
It's not over yet. It's not looking as bright as we would like, but it's not over yet.
And we have till the end of the year.
About 140,000. Yeah.
So I just have a quick question. Remind me again. So the MP4 module made it more accessible because it's available on different platforms, like more platforms. Is that it? Like.
Yeah, you don't need a specialized platform to access it. You can access it from literally from any device.
And so I
an
see that.
agency.
And so we're not able to see really what if there's been an uptick or anything yet.
There has
because-
been.
Oh,
There has been an uptick. So to answer that question, there has been an uptick. But to also kind of answer your question, so the barriers that we have with the HTML/SCORM package, right? So basically just a fancy way of saying that click-through training that, you know, most of us are all accustomed to if we had to take any sort of online compliance training, okay? The barriers that we had as a whole was that you have a lot of agencies, like your SUNY CUNY campuses, that they don't have a centralized learning management system. Some SUNYs are operating under Blackboard, some CUNYs are working under Brightspace, and unfortunately, not some of them are working in newer systems, some are working in older learning management systems. They're not all compatible with what we had created, which is the industry standard, which is HTML, or it's SCORM. So that's pretty much what is the most familiar to anyone that's going to create an online training package on behalf of someone else, okay? So that's one thing. Not every single agency had access or the capability to be able to import that information, right? There were barriers with regards to there. The MP4 allowed anyone to be able to take that. Anyone that may not want to do it in SLMS, as an example, or anyone that had an issue with uploading a SCORM package or an HTML package because it didn't at the time meet the New York City accessibility requirements, or it created other issues. Or you have employees who aren't who don't work normal 9 to 5, 8:30 to 4:30 desk jobs. They're mobile employees that need to be able to access the video and the online attestation either from their phone or their tablet or a similar mobile device. So when we launched the MP4 video on YouTube, we received around 3,200 hits that month. So we knew that there was approximately 3,200 employees that viewed the training program. What we don't know is how many of those employees, how much of that employee data is reflected in those aggregate stats. That's what I can't tell you. I can't tell you out of that 3,200 population how many agencies utilized it. Now, in contrast, when we launched our online certification, meaning that we just didn't make it available in YouTube, meaning that we knew individually that Marlena accessed the online and she certified that she completed training. Michael San enrolled in it. He completed training. From September in October we're only 7 days in, we see around 1,200 hits just for the month of October. So we know that around 1,200 employees for the month of October were able to access the online training, complete the certification, and for those employees who have employee data in the system, they were automatically marked completed for taking the MP4. So we are seeing in this short amount of time an uptick in enrollment and an uptick in completion information.
thank you. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Thanks. So, sorry, I was just confused. Why is MP4 more accessible than HTML? Is our HTML program not sort of consistent with? I would think that those are both things you access through a web browser generally. If it's on YouTube,
correct. It doesn't make sense to us either. But with regards to SLIMs, there was the barrier there, right? You either had access to SLIMs as a state employee or you didn't.
I'm not familiar with that word.
So the statewide learning management system is our learning management system for the state. So when I go in and I take my cybersecurity training, I take my fire safety. So all of the executive branch employees, generally they all have access to the statewide learning management system, okay? But we had a huge number of population that did not have access to the statewide learning management system.
I think what I'm missing is our HTML offering only available through the learning management system? It's not available through the open internet?
That's a tricky question to answer, and I'll do my best to kind of clarify that. So the original HTML package is available in our SharePoint for any agency that's able to upload that content into their own learning management system. But they needed to have that availability to do that. So a lot of the SUNY CUNY campuses that had their own learning management system, if the file package was compatible with their learning management system, and that was a whole other problem, they were able to utilize that file, they could create a certificate, and then they could monitor and track their employee completions that way. So we did provide that with that ability back then. The issue that we had was that our file, our SCORM file and our HTML file weren't always compatible with other agencies' learning management systems. Even though they had the technology to be able to host online training packages, our file wasn't compatible with their system. So we had to also provide them with an alternate method, and that's why for some of these other agencies that do have a learning management system, the MP4 is a great alternative because they can just upload the MP4 into their learning management system and bypass some of those compatibility issues that we experienced.
Okay, so when you
There's
so when you
different
talk,
coding in HTML, so there's HTML4 and 5 and or whatever the different levels are. And the version that was made for use on OERs, the Office of Employee Relations, the chambers, executive chambers, learning management system is just not generally compatible with basic web-based systems. It just won't
okay,
work.
so it has to, so it's coded in HTML, but it has to be loaded into a learning management system before people can use it. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes or no? Generally, yes. To answer your question, generally, yes.
Are we hoping to move towards something that's accessible through the open internet, or is the plan sort of indefinitely?
Yes, that's the work that we're having PDP at Rockefeller College. We're creating a SCORM HTML version that will be web accessible and which can be used on virtually any system. So it will have that accessibility. And it will have the same features that the SLMS version has. That is, it will have a series of quizzes in it. And if you successfully complete the quizzes, you can't complete the course to certification.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
And so will that then mean that we no longer need the MP4 version because anybody can access the more interactive HTML version through their web browser?
In my opinion, you're always going to need the MP4 version. I think we're trying to take a stance that we are providing as many options as we can to get folks trained.
No, I understand that. I understand that policy, but I don't understand who is the person who would be able to access an MP4 file but not a web browser.
Folks that need to take online training in a group setting.
Why can't that group setting have a web browser?
That's their preference. That's their preference. And then that would be like a policy decision that we would have to make, which we don't really have at this point. We'd have to determine what's acceptable and allowable and what's not. I think we should always maintain the MP4 as an alternate option to some folks.
Why do they prefer it? What's better about the non-interactive version?
Well, right now, once PDP provides us with that HTML SCORM package, right, there's going to be no media embedded in there, right? So there's no voiceover there. There's no interactions with regards to video interactions or anything like that. It's just literally text-based training. So it may not be the best mechanism to have a group of folks just sitting there looking at an HTML browser and going through 22 pages of written content. A video might be more effective in that regard.
Oh, wait, I didn't realize. So the new version is not going to have video in it?
It's not. It's not.
Why?
For multiple reasons. One is budgetary, and one is budgetary. We received some quotes from media vendors, and we were quoted at the time for $40,000 per video package, which would be anywhere from 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, which frankly I think is outrageous. We're going to try and do some of that in-house. But in order to be able to provide the program as quickly as possible, that's something that we're going to build later on into the new SCORM HTML package. That's not something that's going to be available the day that we launch it. It's going to be a future build.
Okay, thanks.
We're having it built so it has the ability and will have the code. So once it's delivered to us, we will be able to add the video clips or animations to it. And we're in the process, we hope, of bringing somebody on board so that we can do some or all of that work in-house.
Correct.
The outside costs. So we do have a plan for incorporating more active sort of media into the module. And the module is being constructed, the contract actually calls for it to have the ability for us to insert video and audio into it.
I see. Okay, thanks.
30 more minutes. We don't even have 30 minutes. We should be ending now, but we have,
Let me go through it. Let me see if we can wrap
If you can
up.
finish.
I mean, some of this we've already talked about. So develop, deploy all agency training, scheduling, and tracking system. We have the system. What we're doing now is populating it. We need more employee data. Obviously, we need contact information. We've talked about that at length. And we have thoughts, and we have to develop a plan for getting more information so we can do that.
what does this represent in terms of percentage of the population? 61 agencies and with 0 employee data, 32 agencies with less than 10. Is that a big number?
Out of 385 or so agencies, it's a substantial number. The numbers of employees it represents, I don't know. Well, do we know how many employees we're missing as a result of the outliers not being in there? They're generally smaller agencies, but not.
We have a general idea, but you know, that's kind of what we're targeting next, is doing individual outreach to these entities so that we can get a lot of their employee data in there. And of course, you know, there's always buy-in. We get a lot of pushback sometimes from agencies who say, well, Executive Law 94.8 doesn't tell us anywhere that we have to give you individual employee. You're only required to provide aggregate stats, so we're only going to provide you with aggregate stats. So that's something, you know, that's been a challenge for us as well. We can request the information, but if their interpretation is that administering the training program only includes aggregate level data and not individual employee stats, creates a challenge for us.
Is this a legislative fix here?
No, I don't think legislation is necessary. I think it's clear the statute gives us the authority
But so
to administer the program and to adopt regulations. You know, by and large, that's an issue when we confront it, we're able to overcome. If it comes down to, we've talked about maybe explicit regulations, but I don't know that we're at the point. We'll make a judgment about that.
I just have a quick question. I know that Erin Lynch had scheduled a meeting for us, and I just wonder
Yes.
if other commissioners are waiting to get into that meeting, and if there's a way we can let them know we're running a little bit late, just in case.
the two.
I thought it was
I
at
will let
1:30.
I will let Erin know. I did let her know you might be running late, but I'll let her know again.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily.
Doing
Quick discussion, but we shouldn't. But the answer is it's something we're sensitive to and we're looking at. And I don't think a legislative change is necessary. I think comfortable with statutes is clear that the commission has the authority. You know, if at some point we need to propound regulations, we'll do that. But that shouldn't be a major issue. We've talked about the MP4, we've talked about SCORM, HTML. Again, we'd like to do enhancement of the ethics training for lobbyists and clients, and we're looking to do that in 2026. In terms of the organization of the unit and ensuring that it has the staffing and the resources it needs, in July, the commission approved the reorganization in a number of areas, but particularly in the education unit, we've implemented that. We have an accepted offer out for an assistant director great
Yeah.
number of capabilities that we've talked about. So we're just waiting for the DOD approval, and we're continuing to recruit for the 2 other positions in the of those positions. We have the waiver exception process in place. It's now permanent. Part 939 is permanently adopted in September. It went into effect on an emergency basis in March. Nicely governs applications for hardship exemptions, requests for alternative training, and the like. So we don't have to, the commission doesn't have to address those on an ad hoc basis any longer. Summer big ethics forum was conducted with agency ethics officers. A good deal of follow-up, as you can see. Total of over 60,000 emails have gone out. As a result, to individually notify persons for whom we have email addresses of their training obligations. Respect to agency sources, we have expanded our course offerings. As I mentioned, in addition to having the broad CETC course that our unit administers, our unit is also conducting agency-specific trainings on request. We like to have 100 or more individuals signed up for those. Orlena, is that the goal? Generally, that's our preference, but if smaller numbers, and there's smaller agencies, we'll do smaller numbers of them. And we have an expanded schedule out now on the website and the ability to add more classes. Supports that. Discuss the MP4 and the upcoming SCORM HTML modules will make the on-demand course far more accessible. Literally, there should be virtually no one who won't have access to it, one way or the other. Major collective bargaining issue existed with the MTA. That's been resolved. We have a final memorandum of understanding with them. The unit and the ethics division, Michael, have approved the training module that MTA is going to use for their workers. We're happy with the way they're going to do the training. As Marlena mentioned, they're going to administer the program on their own, and they have represented that they will train everyone. But their goal is to have everyone trained by the end of the year. And that's in excess of 50,000. It's a very large number of individuals. And we can add that to the total that we were talking about in getting as far as we can this year toward the 330,000. That will count substantially.
What is the other big institution? What is the other big agency?
Corrections.
Corrections. That's a union-based too.
Yes.
So this memorandum covers that too.
Now, this memorandum is just for the MTA.
Did we do one with the?
That's not, I don't think it's been necessary.
It hasn't been an issue.
Yeah, it hasn't been an issue.
No, they just have a preference for doing live trainings. Who knows themselves.
Is it possible that you would eliminate demand training if you find that it's not desirable on demand training?
Well, you know, our view has been that if an agency has the capability and they want to require or administer live training annually, that satisfies the requirements of the statute, not compelled to use the on-demand. But it's available to them, and from our perspective, it would satisfy requirements. You know, generally with respect to ethics requirements, our general position is agencies can have more stringent requirements if they feel that's necessary. And it may well be, you know, that Cox has made a judgment that it's important with their work, for the nature of the work that they do, that they would prefer to have in-person, face-to-face, live interactive trainings conducted. I'm not going to second guess that. data system incompatibilities. It's something that exists at the MTA that we're working on. We have a task force, basically, individuals in ITS who were tasked with working with MTA to get their data into CETA in a form that works for us.
That seems not just unique to MTA, it seems to be across the board.
There are some smaller outlying agencies, and ITS has dealt with data translation issues where agencies that are, because we're relying generally on payroll data, payroll coming on board is the trigger for ethics training, 90-day of inception requirement. Because we're dealing with payroll data, those agencies that are outside of the controller's office for payroll purposes have their own payroll systems. And so ITS has to build little translation modules to support the data. But those are generally smaller agencies. MTA is somewhat bigger and somewhat more sophisticated. In terms of effectiveness testing and the like, we had talked previously, and if we had unlimited budgeting, we would have had a budget item this year to work with a major consulting firm to develop metrics for assessing effectiveness.
Yeah.
We have been told to expect not receptivity to budget increase this year. And in terms of titrating or wanting to have staffing commensurate with the agency's needs, particularly in the training unit, but across the agency, it's not practical to budget this year, and it may be premature. What we want to do, rather than bringing in a big consulting firm, is bring in the data. Let's see what we've got. Let's see what we can do in terms of in-house assessments, and also what tools we can develop, both using CETA, which has a lot of data in it. We'll have a lot of data in it, and maybe other methodologies, which could include surveys to populations that have taken the course, and to ethics officers. We did that for purposes of the comprehensive review, but we didn't focus on training purposes of that. We were looking at the effectiveness of the statutes generally, compatibility of the statutes. We want to look at what we can do with other means to develop some kind of foundation. We may be doing more sophisticated work, looking at the effectiveness of training.
This consulting firm, is the cost in excess of six figures?
Don't know. We don't know yet. We haven't identified a firm that has the capability that we're looking for. So that's one of the things we have to research. We would like to find an entity for economic reasons that's done that kind of work before. Haven't identified them. There are firms that have done work in the field of corporate compliance, generally having to do things like compliance with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act requirements. Those metrics don't seem to work for us. But a six-figure number would not, right? It wouldn't surprise me at all based on that kind of work, and that's just not, it's not within our means. Now, but having said that, we're going to have a lot of data as we get to the end of this year. We're going to have a lot of questions about a lot of things, including, generally the feasibility of the program. It may be that money is needed. You raised the question earlier, the agencies have resources to keep up with this. That's one of the questions we're going to be asking. We'll see what the end numbers are. So there's a lot of work we can do internally to develop data. What kind of conclusions can be drawn from it? require some expertise. And the last item. We come back 2 slides, Colin. Back another one. Training accessibility. We're see it. The MP4 module has closed captioning, and it meets certain accessibility requirements. It does not have ASL. The SCORM HTML version that PDP is preparing for us will meet New York State accessibility guidelines. Phase 2 of that will have an ASL capability built into it. And we're planning to create a Spanish language translation in 2026. And then coming to the 2025 to 2028 action plan. Next year, we're looking at commencing the full training program that is having 330,000 individuals trained annually. It's on a calendar year basis. This year's experience, combined with last year's experience, will give us some insight into the into the feasibility of it, B, to the extent there are challenges in getting to that level, making an assessment as to what's needed
And
to
so
get there.
it doesn't sound like you're gonna meet that goal, though. Not gonna meet that goal.
Well, let's see how close we get to it. I think overall, we're going to be very close if we don't actually
Yeah, but
reach the 676.
100,000 to do by the end of the year. 130,000, you said.
140.
140,000 by the end of the year. That's almost half of the goal.
Hopefully, we've got 50,000
But the
to
100,
MTA.
We have 50,000 plus, right, coming from
And
the
then 3 months with the MP4, if we can push hard on that. I'm not saying we're gonna meet it, but maybe we get closer than we think. And then next year, we have the MP4 for the entire year. So that gives us a little bit of a boost, hopefully next year.
I was saying just scale down.
Well, that's a statutory change.
Right.
We don't have the latitude.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, realistically, with the resources that we have, we can't meet that goal.
Well, but it may be an allocation of resource question too that we have to assess.
It's resources and structural barriers.
Well,
I still think the agencies don't have enough of an incentive to make this a priority. And we don't have access to information we need to get the job done. And there's no incentive to get it.
well, one thing is maybe to create the incentives, and we have to take a look at that. I think we do have regulatory powers. If it's a question of applying regulatory powers in order to develop the information, if it's informational, we know that we have the ability currently, and we are successful in expanding our training capability even further. We know we have a capability to provide live trainings that agencies currently are not taking full advantage of. We need to understand why they're not, whether it's barriers, as you say, whether it's just data flow. If we could identify the individuals or partner with the agencies to identify the individuals, maybe that's the issue, we get them signed up. Maybe the agencies aren't paying enough attention, we need them to pay more attention to it. It may not be a capacity or capability question. I mean, combined with the MP4, the SLMS module that we have, the new SCORM HTML module that we're going to have, the on-demand part of it, in terms of capability, should not be an issue. It should be fully possible for everybody who's motivated to take the course and is eligible to take it, to take it. Maybe if there are work assignment issues, people just don't have a minute in the day to do it because of the way they're scheduled. Maybe we have to work with agencies, maybe regulations are needed to make it mandatory that the time be set aside for that. That's half of the 330,000 right there.
When somebody does the MP4 and they get a certification, does that certification go to an email address that they've provided?
If we have it.
It's supposed to go to their agents. It goes to their
Yeah.
agent. Well, to sign up, yeah.
And how do they
Yeah.
sign? I'm sorry, what's the answer?
Yes, she said.
Yes, the answer is yes.
So then,
I got a certificate when I took it.
right, so then going forward, will we have email addresses for all those people who took the MP4?
Yes.
Is the system capturing that? You sign up?
As long, well, we have it currently available as the MP4 on YouTube, and in that case, we won't know what those email addresses are to accommodate those agencies that need to take it on a group setting, and therefore they're just passing out PDF attestations, having these employees enter in the code words, submit that PDF signed attestation back. So in that case, for group settings, we're not going to have those email addresses. For the employees that are using our online certification, and part of the data requirement that they have to provide to us when they're enrolling is their email address, then yes, we will have that email address.
Okay, but you'll have the email address of their supervisors in the group settings, right? Can't you send it to them?
Yeah, they have to request, they have to inform us that they're taking the on-demand training in a group setting so that we can provide them with the correct information with regards to administration, tracking, and so forth. I know my team especially, we're looking forward to the end of this 12/31/2025 cycle because for us, we haven't yet experienced a true training cycle the way that executive law mandates us to actually perform. I want to know, based off of the information that we have beginning in 2025, how sustainable and effective is it with regards to aggregate training stats, and how sustainable and effective is the mandate as a whole with regards to tracking individual employee level data, the way that executive law mandates us to do so. We haven't done that yet. We haven't completed a full training cycle in that way. So I look forward, I know my team looks forward to the end of this training cycle so that we have better information and better data with regards to being able to answer those questions for the board. Because as you said, we'll have a new SCORM package. We'll have a new HTML package. We'll have an MP4 package, and we'll have more employee data that way. And then we can give you a more definitive answer as to, is this working, is this not working? In addition to that, I've been meeting with our own legal staff, including Michael Sand and Aaron Lynch, and helping them identify data points that our in-house attorneys should be measuring moving forward, so that training has a better idea if these informal guidance requests that keep increasing from month to month, are they a direct result of training by simply having our own attorneys provide surveys to these folks saying, we're excited that you have a question with regards to a particular topic area. Did you recently attend training? Just even allowing us to be able to kind of track that very basic data point would give us more information internally if a lot of these informal requests are being driven because more folks are taking training with us. There's things that we want to be able to explore in-house and data mine in-house so that we can start making more correlations as to how effective the training is. I know for the commissioners, it's more about measuring behaviors, like is our training shaping behaviors? But for us here in training, we're more concerned about sustainability.
What do you mean when you say sustainability?
Is the mandate, the way that it's written right now, sustainable throughout? Is it possible to really train 330,000 employees on a yearly basis? Is it possible for us to actually access employee data for over 330,000 people? Are we able to get email addresses for that population of people? Is the state as a whole able to meet the mandate in its current iteration? That's really what we're trying to get at. Is it sustainable? Are the agencies able to do the amount of administrative work that is required in order for us to be able to get those figures? Because aggregate data is great. It gives you those large numbers, but it doesn't tell you if the mandate is being executed properly statewide.
So it almost seems to me, Sandy, that I'm answering my own question, that it probably doesn't make sense to really begin measuring tools, identifying tools to measure the extent to which the training is effective until we're able to figure out a way to reach all employees on an ongoing basis, dealing with all the transitions that take place in the employment pool.
Yeah, I mean, part of me wants to say yes, because we have budgetary constraints to begin with. But you could measure a partially compliant system too, and you could reach the conclusion that training half the workforce is effective in achieving certain results. But if the goal is to have everybody trained every year, then it makes sense to measure the effectiveness of that when you're actually accomplishing it. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with it from that perspective.
And maybe it shouldn't be every year. I mean, that was a comment that came up during our public testimony. Said, why do we have to have it so often?
Yeah, I mean, these are all questions that need to be answered, and we're answering them not as we're building a system. We're answering them when we're trying to comply with a requirement that's been imposed. But again, I think for a lot of reasons, in terms of setting aside effectiveness and impact, in terms of feasibility, I think we're not going to be able to make a real assessment until we get to the end of the year, and then if we fall short, we're able to look back and try to figure out what caused that.
So we'll even do that in 2026.
We should be doing that in 2026. As we've said before, the real assessment should wait until we've got to the end of the test period and we see where we've come out. I mean, we know, as everybody's pointed out, that some effect, a positive effect is occurring because we're seeing two things. We're seeing an increase in requests for guidance. It's a very substantial increase. Year over year, 60% increases in guidance requests. It's quite substantial, and there's nothing else anybody can point to, so that we can point to account for that. And we're seeing a smaller increase, but an increase nonetheless in complaints that are coming in that seem to be originating. Often they're anonymous, but seem to be originating in the workforce. Likely means that individuals are more sensitive to things going on around them, or inclined to report to them. So we think, at least in that respect, there's a measurable, if not specifically measurable, a noticeable positive effect taking place.
Before we close, committee members, do you have any questions final questions you have?
I just congratulate Marlena on taking this so far since our last meeting, and I'm glad you're better staffed. You seem a little less frustrated. I'm happy to see that. And so thank you thank you and your staff for all that good work. It seems like it's really coming together well.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioners James and Commissioner Ayers, any final questions?
No, I don't have any questions. No.
Nope, thanks.
Michael, you have any comments?
No.
Yeah, I thought the presentation was very well done. It makes a lot of sense. Progress, in spite of the challenges, heroic work on the part of the staff. Thank you for it.
It's just looking at the surface of it, but the amount of work,
It's a lot.
but tremendous by our staff, and really have to give credit to the agencies themselves, for all the maybe shortcomings that we tend to highlight when we're talking about statistics. The positive side is that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of state employees, nearly 500,000, probably 500,000 by now, have received ethics training in a 3.5-year period. I think that has to be unprecedented. And it's all been done without any major budget allocations for it, and it's been done in-house. It's been built very, very, very effective. I think it's really impressive. We have to give everybody credit for everything that's been accomplished. But thank you. Thanks to the committee.
That's-
Good questions.
And no other questions, we can end them. Could we?
You can take a motion to adjourn.
Sure.
The objections.
So what should I sign into now?
All right, I think we have to go offline.
You have to second it, doesn't she?
Okay.
Can you just let us know when we're out?
Thank you.